See, a lot of people have been asking, what happens if Tinubu failed to be disqualified? And when is the final judgment? Listen to this so that you know when will the final judgment be. And what will happen if Tinubu failed to be disqualified? If court failed to disqualify Tinubu, this is what will happen in Nigeria. It's not a joke. Just listen to this and hear this explanation. What will happen if Tinubu failed to be disqualified? If court failed to disqualify Tinubu on these many grounds of disqualification that Tinubu is facing, what will happen after? Please watch and share this video.
To the final addresses of PDP and Labour Party, we decided to make this compilation of the consequence of not disqualifying Tinubu. But before we see all that, let's show you the timeline of what is remaining in court, because a lot of people are asking when will the judgment be delivered. Yes, that shows how anxious people are to see that justice is done. The respondents are expected to finalize their replies on Friday, 28th July 2023. After that, all parties will reconvene for the adoption of addresses. After the adoption of addresses, the court will now enter into serious deliberations. During the process of deliberations, they will also write their judgment. It is in this period that they will communicate to the public the day they will deliver judgment. The day a judicial earthquake will happen in Nigeria. The day justice will prevail or justice will be denied. So going forward, you can see that no one actually knows the judgment day. That's for the honorable judges to decide. And during the period of deliberation and writing their judgment, they will still give themselves enough time to make sure that the right thing is done. Remember what the presiding judge said during the pre-hearing, that they will look at all matters based on their merit, not based on technicality. And if you look at the final addresses of the respondents, you will see that they are all hoping that this matter is dismissed or treated based on technicality. Imagine APC in their final address urging the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal judges to throw away all the INEC CTCs that Labour Party submitted, simply because the person that certified them at INEC office didn't put his signature one by one on each document. That the section of the Evidence Act they cited forbids using of engraved signature as in a stamp to stamp on certified copies of documents. So what they are trying to say is that all the INEC certified true copies were not correctly certified, so therefore the court should not admit them in evidence. This leads to one question. Are the contents of these documents correct? Did APC, INEC, and other respondents make any attempt to counter the documents with superior documents without tendering a single result sheet in evidence and without calling a single witness? APC wants the court to disregard the INEC CTCs submitted by Labour Party just because the INEC official that certified them did not sit down to sign all the documents one by one. Thousands of documents that they delivered to Labour Party. APC expects an official to sit down and sign them one by one. Well, this is not too surprising, because when they were shouting all those objection in court, we all knew that they would be hunting and fishing for technicalities. But the judges know better. After all parties agreed not to object to INEC CTCs or any other CTCs for that matter. So it's of no consequence. Now, let's see the consequence and the precedents that the judges will set if they fail to disqualify Tinubu on all these grounds. Yes, Tinubu is facing disqualification on many grounds. Let's start with certificate forgery. There are many celebrated election disputes where the Supreme Court disqualified a candidate because of certificate forgery. So what if they don't do it in the case of Tinubu? What will happen going forward? Because the Supreme Court is not just the final court in Nigeria, their decisions also formulate our policy. Yes, whether it's election matter, banking, security, you name it, whatever decision they take will always affect our policy going forward. So if they fail to disqualify Tinubu, how will it affect future candidates going forward? Or even the ones they have disqualified in the past, they will have a right to appeal to the Supreme Court again so that they can revisit the judgment. What it means is that any contestant for an elective position will just wake up, get online, log into paying interest, and download any university certificate of his choice for any university he wants. Just fill in the name, the date, the signatures are already there, then any degree he likes. Just fill everything, download it, print it, and add in your INEC form and submit. No one can question you going forward. If it is brought in any court, no court can disqualify you based on the certificate from paying interest, because that's exactly what Tinubu submitted. So if that judicial precedence is set that someone who goes online to download a university certificate and goes on to submit it to INEC, that person didn't forge the certificate, if that precedence is set, going forward, anyone can do the same thing and no disqualification. The person will win election and, life goes on. The next disqualification ground for Tinubu is the one that the Allied People's Movement are fighting for. The invalid candidacy of Tinubu himself, not Shettima. People keep confusing the two. They are not the same. They are not saying that Shettima was wrongfully nominated or that he should pass a primary election. There's no primary election for a vice presidential candidate. The matter is not about Shettima at all. They're only saying that according to the law, it permits the presidential candidate to replace his vice presidential candidate within 14 days after the first one withdrew from the position. And for the fact that Tinubu failed to appoint Shettima within 14 days, his candidacy became invalid according to the law. So at that point, for APC to have a candidate in the election, they should have conducted a fresh primary to determine their presidential candidate, not vice presidential candidate. So failure to conduct a fresh primary to determine a presidential candidate makes their ticket invalid. So if Tinubu is not disqualified based on invalid nomination, what will be the consequence going forward in Nigerian politics? Well, the reason this law was made in the first place was to checkmate abuse by politicians. There are time limits the law prescribes for candidates to attend certain stages. These time limits govern the election from primary election up to election proper. That's why there is a time limit for campaigns. This to make sure that there is orderliness, no lawlessness, no impunity. It will also help INEC because during elections, they have their hands full. They can't be expecting you to already have a candidate and at the late hour you say, I've changed the candidate, this is a new candidate. No. They have to print ballots on time ahead of the election. So they can't continue waiting for you. That's why everything has time limit. So going forward, that means election might be postponed because a candidate failed to abide by the time limits. A lot of scenarios, in fact, all the gains we made from the amendment of the Electoral Act 2010 will be like a waste. So going forward, anyone can do anything he likes, break all barriers, break all time limits, nothing will happen. You will still contest the election, and if you eventually win, you'll be declared winner. No one can challenge you based on the fact that you missed the 14-day deadline to appoint a new vice presidential candidate after the first one withdrew his nomination. So that's that. The next one that will have serious consequences going forward if they fail to disqualify Tinubu is the issue of dual nationality. Not just holding the passport alone, he still lied about it on his INEC form. So what's the consequence going forward? This one has serious consequences going forward because many people can say anything in their INEC form. No scrutiny is required. If you take them to court, they will free them. They will say, no, he said he didn't do it, so that's it. There's also the risk of having someone whose allegiance is to another country. Someone like Tinubu has family in the United States. He has a home in the UK. He's always in France. Someone like that, his allegiance might be to another country, not even Nigeria. Look at the time of Buhari. He gave out justifications for building a rail line to Niger Republic instead of the economic reasons. Yes, there might be economic reasons. Of course, you should have built to Nigerian cities first because here, we generate more revenue here than Niger Republic will ever do. And immediately he left power, he went to Niger Republic. So going forward, this is the risk the country will face. Many people whose allegiance are to other countries will come to Nigeria and do whatever they like. They can even make decisions that will favor a particular country at the detriment of Nigeria. So it has serious consequences going forward if he's not disqualified based on the dual nationality. And he willfully took up the nationality, not like he got it from birth, like the Constitution says. And if someone willfully takes up a nationality, that means the person must swear an oath of allegiance to the country. The next one is the most dreaded. If they fail to disqualify him based on the proceeds of narcotics to the tune of $460,000 which the US government took from his account. If they fail to disqualify him based on this, that means anyone with a criminal past, whether he has gone to prison or not, will be able to aspire and become the president of Nigeria going forward. No matter the kind of crime, whether it's narcotics related, whether it's 419, anything at all. And before you say he wasn't convicted, he doesn't need to be. So the consequences can only be imagined. And there's one saying that leaders inspire. So imagine the kind of leaders with this kind of past. Imagine the kind of inspiration that they will give to Nigerian youths going forward. Also, that kind of business might start thriving in Nigeria, and the police and other security agencies won't do anything about it because they take order from the man at the top. The next one is the double nomination of Shettima. Although many people think that this has been dealt with by the Supreme Court, but if you check the arguments of the Labour Party in their final address, you will see that the Supreme Court did not address the matter. They only addressed locus standi, and going by the evidence presented by the Labour Party, there's a high chance that they will be disqualified based on the double nomination of Shettima. What of if they don't? That means the same consequence faced in that of the APM, the invalid nomination. It will affect our policy the same way going forward. Now, apart from all the disqualification grounds, there's still a constitutional ground that Tinubu failed to meet. He failed to score 25% of the total scores in the FCT as required by the Constitution. Are they going to bend this rule for one man? That will mean they will need to rewrite the Constitution in order to suit him. But the judges can't do this because they are judges. The rewriting and amendment of the Constitution and making of laws is the job of the legislature. So what if they invent anything, any technicality, any abracadabra to exonerate him and say 25% is not required? What will happen going forward in Nigeria? This will lead to ridicule of not just the judges that pass the judgment, but the entire judiciary. It will mean that they have surrendered their power to the executive branch. Right now, they are supposed to be clawing back their powers and asserting their authority because most of their orders are not obeyed by the executive branch. In fact, most orders that they give are subjected to administrative review by the executive branch, which is not supposed to be. So the ball is in their court to reassert their authority. When judges make orders, it should be obeyed without buts and ifs. Look at what happened in Lagos between the DSS and the prison officials. It was a blatant disrespect of the court and its orders. So the ball is in their court. If they decide to give power to people who are lawless, at the end of the day, none of their orders will be obeyed and we'll just be sliding into dictatorship. Thanks for watching.